Remember this. What I'm saying on stage today applies to future medical professionals, fitness professionals, and those in sports rehabilitation, among others. Even fitness enthusiasts, marathon runners, and swimmers, any sport in fact, requires muscles and fundamental strength. While everyone's minds are at their sharpest, let's start by learning the most difficult thing, which is also the most important. In other words, if you don't understand what I'm about to explain, it will be very hard for you to grasp the content of the next 4 days. But this isn't something you can master all at once. I myself spent over 10 years learning it. Let me show you something. There's a sentence written here. Getting the lying position right is 100 times more important than doing the movement correctly. For example, as a coach who appears to be very professional when he teaches his clients, every movement the client performs looks very standard. However, if the grip is wrong, then all that standard form afterward doesn't really mean much. Before starting this course, what I spent the most time thinking about was how to convey something so subtle and complex, because even a difference of just a few millimeters can completely change the way your muscles feel. To most people watching from the side, it might not look any different, but for the person actually doing the exercise, the difference feels absolutely huge. Even the slightest deviation can completely change the sensation in the target muscle. Now let's take a look. I drew a whole bunch of lines for you. Can anyone actually understand what these lines mean? What do these lines correspond to? When you're doing different exercises, where is your support? Where should you be exerting force? Let me show you the first one. This white line here. What kind of exercise do you think puts pressure here? Is it pushing, pulling, bending, or supporting? What do you think it is? This line represents the pressure point when you're pushing, where the dumbbell, barbell, or handle applies force during the movement. Yes, whether you're doing a push correction or this kind of movement, the dumbbell or barbell moves along this path. Most people move it horizontally across the palm like this. If this line is off, then even if all your other force lines above are correct, it doesn't really matter. Plus, it's especially easy to injure your wrist or elbow, and shoulder joint injuries. So a lot of beginners, when bench pressing, from the very start with just the empty bar, especially men, by the time they reach around 100 kilograms, they start getting injured. Either it's the long head of the biceps tendon getting hurt, or injuries to the inner side of the elbow joint, or TFCC, which is triangular fibrocartilage complex injuries, and all sorts of other problems. These are related to incorrect hand positioning during the pressing movement. Let me just give you a random example. Most gym members, when they're pressing, let's say this is a dumbbell, if you hold it so that it looks more parallel to the ground, that's actually wrong, and the more parallel it is, the more off it is. But for example, if you're pressing with a Smith machine, the bar is fixed. You see, with a dumbbell, I can tilt it, I can angle it like this, but with the Smith machine, you can't. The bar is fixed. So with a lot of machines, when you're using them, because the handles are fixed, you can only adjust your hands. For example, since the equipment is fixed, when you grip it, you end up holding it like this. But if you grip it like this instead, then there's no support point on the outside, and all the pressure falls on your metacarpal bones. In this situation, the force transmission is problematic, and your joint support is also compromised. So the more you press like this, the more likely you are to develop triangular fibrocartilage complex, TFCC, injuries. Once you injure the triangular fibrocartilage, it takes at least several months to recover. Plus, you still want to keep training. If you don't want to stop, you end up damaging it while trying to heal, making recovery very difficult. That's why many women, especially those who are very left-brained, after gripping, look in the mirror and notice their hands aren't parallel, so they try to force them into a parallel position. In other words, when you grip naturally without looking, you might actually be doing it right. But as soon as you look and deliberately try to adjust, you'll definitely get it wrong. So first of all, you shouldn't grip like this, facing straight forward. And when you grip with your hands perfectly parallel, it's especially easy for your wrist to collapse downward. Because the weight presses down on your metacarpal here, it immediately causes your wrist to collapse. So when you push like this, your force line breaks right here. Now, what is the prerequisite for all proper pushing movements? It's that after the pressure is applied here, if you look at the dumbbell or barbell from the side, the vertical line divides the inner and outer sides of the forearm, splitting the forearm into two equal halves. Two equal halves. If you do it like this, doesn't it shift to the outside of the forearm? Right? At this point, your joint support and muscles are no longer bearing the load, and the greatest pressure is on your wrist. So the weight you're holding must be perpendicular to the center of your forearm. Only by pushing like this can you exert force, stabilize it, and ensure effective force transmission. Your muscles and fascia can then control it. This is the most basic requirement, whether you're pressing a barbell or not. If you want to improve your bench press performance, But if your wrist is like this and you're putting all that weight, over 100 kilograms on your wrist, just how strong do you think your wrist is? There's no way you can increase your intensity to a very high level. So if his wrist and hand aren't kept completely upright, look, once it's fully upright, doesn't the bar move to the inside of the forearm? Let's look again. If my wrist is kept completely upright, then the weight I'm holding, the force, the line of gravity, goes directly to the inside of my forearm. So at this point, the forearm isn't providing any support. That's why when we teach students, including when I teach the teachers in my own team, I say, hey, this is an exception, this is an exception. That means during the pressing movement, the force shifts to the inside and you can't use the strength of the outside. If the outside isn't under pressure, the muscles on the outside aren't tightened, then you can't use the strength of the peak, and the outside of your elbow joint isn't stable, and then your inner the pressure is too great and the outside is unstable. And after you hold it upright like this, if you're using free weights, it's easy for the weight to fall inward like this. So at this point, the proximal joints of your fingers can't exert force. You can only grip and pinch it with the pads at the distal ends of your fingers. So as soon as you try to press, you can't hold on to it. This is the most basic mistake that beginners are especially prone to making. What should you look for first? For all pushing movements, no matter how you grip, when you hold the dumbbell or barbell, its vertical line should be at the center of your forearm, perpendicular to the center of your forearm. Push like this, push like this. First of all, you're less likely to get injured. We're not even talking about whether you can build muscle yet. First, don't injure yourself. It's a sad thing if you get hurt before you even start building muscle. Secondly, when you grip it, basically the weight should be pressing down above your pisiform bone. The pisiform bone is there to provide support. It presses down like this, so it's at an angle. So then, what should you be feeling? You might wonder, at what angle exactly should I be holding this? How many degrees should I tilt from the web between my thumb and index finger toward the base of my pinky? Don't bother memorizing these details, it's not useful. Instead, just remember to check whether your pisiform bone is pressing down and whether the vertical line is aligned with the center of your forearm. Then, with your eyes closed, feel whether all 5 of your fingers are in close contact with the dumbbell or barbell. Check for any gaps. If there are gaps, it means you're not gripping it correctly. Adjust your grip until there are no gaps. The pressure is on the pisiform bone, and the alignment is with the center of your forearm. If it's aligned with the center line, then basically there's no problem. You need to put this into practice. So at the beginning, have 2 people each hold one end of a stick and pull outward. If you're gripping it correctly, it will be hard for the other person to pull the stick away from you. Of course, if your grip is incorrect, it's easy for the stick to be pulled away. But pulling and pushing are actually different. When you're pushing, the weight is pressing down on you. When you're pulling, you're holding on to the weight to keep it from moving away. There's a slight difference. But this is helpful for practicing your basic grip. Alright, if you think you've understood, I'll find someone who hasn't practiced much, have them grip it, and you'll act as their coach. Try to point out their mistakes, and let's see if you can understand.